Welcome to Inside Games Daily, the only gaming news show brave enough to say that Star Wars Battlefront 2 is finally blowing up 7 years after its release because it was always good.
It was good, but it was buried.
Yes.
You know, I don't blame anyone for not necessarily noticing that until now. But yeah, we had a lot of fun with it back in 2017, but boy, what a traditional EA DICE game that was at launch. Really asks a lot of you to have some fun.
Yeah, it was a terrible, terrible launch. But Star Wars Battlefront 2, originally released way back in 2017, smashed its all-time player peak this Monday with 18,600 concurrent players on Steam, which doesn't sound like a lot, I'll be honest. But for Battlefront, pretty good.
Yeah, for an old game everybody thought they moved on from, this is delightful. I love stories like this. Stories of just people enjoying a video game. We don't get it too often, so let's enjoy it while we can. The game previously peaked back in January 2021 with 10.4 thousand players. It is worth noting here, though, that Battlefront 2 did not originally launch on Steam, so those numbers don't really correlate with what might have been a Steam or the actual launch of the game. It was exclusive to EA's Origin back then, which was one of many reasons people hated it.
Still, it's a remarkable revival, given that there's no real event tied to this at all. Around the end of April, the game drew around 1,000 peak players a day. And since then, it's climbed steadily, spawning an organic social media campaign to invite players back into the game.
Yeah, come here, have fun. Forget about the world for a while. You know what? I can do that. And this is what really shocks me. The surprise reinvigoration has boosted Battlefront 2 back up the sales charts. It's number 29 in the top seller list. I think it even broke the top 25 over the weekend. And it's not even on sale right now. It actually was, I think, back in April.
Yeah, it currently costs $40. And I've been telling people, do not spend $40 on this game. Do Game Pass. It's on Game Pass Ultimate through the EA Play thing. Just do that. Don't spend $40 on this game from 2017 if you want to play it for the next 5 days or whatever. Do that. And just a reminder, all of this data that we're talking about is Steam only. We don't know if it's whatever on the EA app or who knows how that's going.
Yeah, and that's kind of in reference to the peak concurrent player count. Odds are it's much higher than that. Across console, across Epic Game Store, which might be a factor here. We'll get to that in a minute. But we have to ask the question, right? Why is everybody coming back to Battlefront 2 right now?
Nobody has an answer. No one has a very specific, like we're gonna pose a lot of different speculation, but we don't actually have an answer for this. So correlation does not equal causation and all that, but here are a handful of possible Star Warsy events that could have reminded folks to check out Star Wars Battlefront 2 again.
Yeah, first up, and this is the strongest one, I think, nostalgia. Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith celebrated its 20th anniversary with another cinematic run in late April, and that might have had a lot of people remembering just how good Star Wars used to be.
I saw a lot of articles that were like, you know what, Revenge of the Sith is better than I thought. That's because it always has been.
Yeah, Episode 3, solid, real solid movie.
Always been the best of those three. Also, Season 2 of Andor just concluded its run. Maybe the best thing that Star Wars has ever made.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that. Best Star Wars, top TV, just in general across the whole medium. So that feels great. And here's a really interesting one that I didn't really even remember. Back in 2021, Battlefront 2 was free on the Epic Game Store, and 19 million people claimed a free copy of it.
Wow.
So there's probably a lot of dusty copies of Battlefront 2 that have been waiting for an event just like this.
Boy, that's crazy. I didn't even realize that. Writing for PC Gamer Morgan Park suggests a few more possibilities. First is that Battlefront 2 is and always was a good game, with a launch that was just absolutely ruined by horrible monetization. If you remember, the most downvoted Reddit post of all time, a sense of pride and accomplishment. That's the one.
Man, that was the one. What a time, huh? That was enemy number one. Second, and this is where this is what I start to love, is like kind of analyzing the trends of gaming and how things maybe don't always turn out the way they should, just based on what's going on in context. 2017 was a different time. Service-based shooters were just starting to hit the market, and people loved them. Overwatch, Rainbow Six Siege, games that had endlessly grindable structures, battle passes, skins that you could unlock, loot boxes were a new thing back then.
Yeah, Battlefront 2 just whiffed on all that over monetization versus the torturously long battle passes. They had that card. This is the worst thing in the world. They had a card system where basically they were loot boxes that would give you the cards for the skills. And so the more money you threw into those cards or loot boxes, the better your skills were. It's pay to win out of the gate. And it blew my mind that they launched the game this way.
Yeah, they were pretty significant upgrades and stuff like that. Things that would just make your grenades come back faster. So you were just out there like hucking grenades left. It was silly, yeah. But you can. It's silly now. You know, that was pretty. I think that was them just dropping FIFA Ultimate Team into Star Wars and trying to make money off of it. But 2025 is, of course, a different time. Everybody is sick to death of service-based combat shooters, and they just want something uncomplicated. Match-based gameplay with Star Wars sounds and music. I play 3 rounds and I move on with my life.
You know what, Lawrence? Fantastic point. Take note, new Battlefield, by the way. Take note, new Battlefield, because if you over-monetize that one on launch, everyone's going to be real mad at it. But if you just have some fun, match-based, rounds and gameplay and stuff like that, maybe people will play it.
And I hope so. That's the way. That's the old ways. It's a peaceful life, tending the fields. Not trying to grind out a battle pass before the month ends. And finally, and this is a compelling point, Battlefront 2 as it is now is the beneficiary of all the content that DICE has actually added to the game since launch. And if anybody bought it at launch and noped out of it because of the monetization, there's a lot of stuff there they haven't even seen.
Yeah, it includes tons of maps and characters spanning the entire Star Wars cinematic universe. So everything is in there. Prequels, original trilogy, the sequels. I mean, we're talking every single, BB-9E, BB-8's Evil Companion. I mean, we're talking all of them.
Jeez, I got all of them. Yeah. And 2/3 of which people remember fondly. So yeah, a lot of people have it in their libraries. It's a bullshit-free way to enjoy Star Wars nostalgia, no matter what your flavor is. You know, whether you like the original trilogy or the prequels.
Lawrence, what about the sequels?
Yeah, whether you like the original trilogy or the prequels, Star Wars Battlefront 2 is your game.
But Lawrence, Rey Skywalker's in it.
Maybe that'll be the hero I get. Everybody else will be running for Han Solo.
The resurgence hasn't prompted much of a response from EA or DICE. At this point, Battlefront 2 developer Matt Helge Holm, original and 2017, posted a low-key comment on Reddit saying he'd like to, quote, get the gang back together to work on Battlefront 3.
Yeah, this is kind of nice. Holm also commented that they are, quote, loving seeing all the memes and the fun people are having, end quote, with this revival. So it's kind of nice that a bunch of developers that maybe got, buried under EA's over monetization, or at least having the emotional payoff they didn't get to have when the game originally launched.
That is really nice, because I'm sure it wasn't their decision to make those loot boxes with the pay-to-win cards. I'm pretty positive. A handful of other developers and performers have signaled their willingness to return to the project if they want to make a Battlefront 3. Dutifully chronicled and cheerleaded by the Battlefront Updates account on X.
The owner of that account also promises to get a knee and numb tattoo if EA announces a new mainline Battlefront game this year.
Oh boy, that's a tall order for them. And don't forget, everybody's favorite knee and numb, the guy that goes. He's Lando's co-pilot. He's the best. Just for historical context, in case you weren't around in 2017 for the original launch of Battlefront 2, it did not go well. Let's talk about it. This is one of the worst launches in all of video games, in my opinion.
Yeah, and honestly was kind of the end of evil EA, if you really think about it. They got burned so bad on that launch that EA changed the way that they do things in a pretty significant way. So, yeah, I was just kind of musing this, and Bruce, I'm curious where this ranks with you. In terms of reception, it certainly seems like one of the worst EA DICE launches ever. And that includes Battlefield, which has itself had some pretty cataclysmic launches. Yeah, the over-monetization really just put everyone off. Everybody had way too much of it by then, and that was it.
Yeah, Darth Vader was locked. That's just like, this was just like every cardinal sin of video games was made for this specific launch. The game revolved, we talked about this, but the game revolved around those star cards of various ranks that would substantially enhance your character's performance. My best example of this is because I did not play this game at launch because I was so angry about it. Jacob got it, and Jacob was getting the pay-to-win stuff because he's Jacob and he wanted to play Star Wars, and that's okay. He got this card that made your rounds explosive for the heavy class. And those explosive rounds back then killed everything, and no one had the card. It was like this really rare card, because when Jacob had it and I didn't, I would get out there and play with him, and he'd be like, go and kill 50 people, and then I would kill 2 people, and I'd be like, Jacob, how are you getting so many kills? He was like, I got that card, and I was like, fuck.
Wow, proof positive, huh? I have weird memories of like just the campaign being weirdly awful. Just like The levels were pretty cool. I remember there was a level where you were on the deck of a Star Destroyer, and that was before, Episode 9 did that. That was cool looking, but the writing I remember being some of the just cringiest, most awful stuff. Like I wanted to unzipper my skin and slither away on the floor, get away from my TV. The frustrating thing is there were some cool characters in there and a lot of potential. It just seems like maybe some levels got hacked out right at the end, and they had to just write these little things to connect things together that, I don't know. It was very trite and hokey and Star Warsy in probably the worst ways. So it was just like a really rough campaign, and yeah, the multiplayer was no fun because I was just getting rolled by battle droids really a lot, pun intended there. So yeah, but like we said, EA really drastically changed course. The first hint that a new EA might have been on the way. They actually did yank out a lot of that monetization and a lot of the systems people complained about in a pretty short order. I want to say it was maybe in like 2 months. They had patched it all out. But by then, the narrative was set, the damage was done, and a lot of people had moved on.
Yeah, EA actually supported the game until 2020, concluding with an update that added the Battle of Scarif from Rogue One. So when you go and play this, and if you watched Andor and all that other stuff, you'll be like, oh, this is fun. Like you'll remember it being fun because of all the new Star Wars stuff that has come after the fact. Also, I will say, in 2017, and then it came out the end of 2017, and there was 2018. This is around the time there was Last Jedi. Last Jedi was very polarizing with a lot of Star Wars fans, and it only got worse with Rise of Skywalker. So like Battlefront 2 had a real uphill battle. It really did, and like the game they made was really, really good, except for that over monetization, and also just the fact that I think everybody was really tired of Star Wars at this time. And this was, I can't remember when Solo came out, but that's like that movie also not so bad, but did not do well. Because everybody was just so tired of what they were doing, all the new Disney shit.
Yeah, I agree. Overproduction of Star Wars just kind of had everybody soured right away. And I feel like kind of Outlaws got the bad end of that stick too. Hopefully, given enough time, people will go back and rediscover Star Wars Outlaws in the way they have Battlefront 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting situation, and a really bizarre one. This makes me think of the stats that like most Steam players are playing older games. It could also be that just in the climate that we're in right now, with new games coming out left and right and a lot of attempts to try to make these shiny new service-based shooters, Marathon, Arc Raiders, whatever, maybe people really are enjoying just having something in their account already they don't have to buy. And when they boot it up, since EA has already pulled the plug on it, there's no pop-ups asking you to sign up for anything, there's no battle passes, there's nothing, just a lot of content that you can play pretty easily. And yeah, it seems like that's what people want these days.
There is one negative to that, Lawrence, because like you said, EA pulled the plug. There are hackers everywhere. Hackers are hacking this game to bits. They're like basically like they'll turn your character into a camera that floats around the. It's like the whole thing is hacked. So like if you play a couple hours, you're probably going to get hacked. That's pretty standard. So no, don't get frustrated. Just rematch make because. Like we said, EA is not maintaining that. And I'm glad you also brought up Arc Raiders. I heard this really weird Arc Raiders theory. Arc Raiders is made by Embark. And Embark are a lot of developers that were ex-Battlefield developers. Maybe even, I have to go look, but maybe even Battlefront developers. Because obviously DICE had made Battlefield and Battlefront. So people that played Arc Raiders, they have said, oh, hey, Arc Raiders feels like... Battlefront feels like Arc Raiders, and that's why they're playing Battlefront, because we don't have Arc Raiders. And I was like, this is a stretch. To me, it feels really like a stretch because they played the Arc Raiders beta or whatever, and then they were like, well, we need something that's like that because it's third person, and it does feel a lot like Arc Raiders when you play it. Except it's not Extraction. Obviously, Battlefront's not Extraction. So that's another weird little theory that people have said. That Arc Raiders reminded people of how good Battlefront was.
That's a bit, yeah, okay. I mean, if it did, it did. I have to admit, I didn't think about Battlefront for a single second while playing Arc Raiders, but...
Neither, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Why not? I'll take it.
There's also one other thing, and I want to shatter everybody's hopes and dreams right now. They're not making a Star Wars Battlefront 3. They're not. Maybe in 10 years' time, but we're not getting one in the next year or two. When Battlefront 2 came out, I want to say that put the nail in the coffin for the next, I guess, game in this line of Battlefront. And I say this loving Star Wars Battlefront. I love Battlefront. I love Battlefield. I love what they've been doing for years. But they're not making this. They have to pay for that Star Wars license. That's $100 million. It's like so much money. And it's got to be in over 10 years. Like EA is not doing that. EA has the Star Wars license for Respawn, and that's it. I could be wrong, but I don't think that this is enough to convince EA to spend, $500 million on a new Battlefront video game.
Yeah, you hit on something big there, which is that for a branded game, especially something like Star Wars, you got to throw a lot of money on the table. And just the sunk cost of that dictates the only things you can do with it later, basically. You have to make all that money back. EA's looking at all the money they were making off of FIFA at the time. And they're like, the only way this makes sense, business-wise, is if we get FIFA money off the Star Wars brand. They were just trying to do the same thing. Ironically, they don't have the FIFA brand anymore either. So they've gotten out of that line of business entirely. But I can kind of see why it was over-monetized. That doesn't make it a good product. But I can see why at the EA layer, the money men were just like, yeah, we paid $500 million for the exclusive license. If like the only way to make that money back is by making an over-monetized shooter. So they went Star Wars went non-exclusive pretty quickly after that, I think, because Ubisoft made a Star Wars game. So this is a better situation here. Hopefully the life that's been put into Battlefront 2, and especially the life that we're seeing off of smaller scale projects, means maybe something like that could exist. That like maybe somewhere at at Disney, they're willing to license out Star Wars to a smaller partner for a smaller amount of money, and then they can make a cool pixel art platformer or a kind of like more bare bones competitive shooter that doesn't aim to be the complete Call of Duty package.
That would require Disney to not want to make $500 million profit. And I'm not sure that company will ever be like that. But boy, what a dream that is, Lawrence. What a dream.
It's nice to dream. And on that note, we'd like to shout out a couple of dreamers that definitely have never had any thoughts about confronting a robotic version of themselves in a smoky wooded hallway and cutting off their own head to reveal it's just them. Ryan Daraberry and Jose Diaz. Thank you very much for supporting the show and having very normal dreams.
I've got two patrons that have never gone into a cave and looked in a mirror and seen 1,000 of themselves back to back, and then heard that they were actually their parents were nobody, that they weren't important at all, and then it turns out actually they were Palpatine. Jared Watkins and Buck, you're Palpatines.
Classic cinematic moment, huh? Remember when they kissed and everybody was like, no! Oh!
I'll never forget it. I just watched it. I'll never forget. I love it. Watching them kiss at the end. Wow. What a time.